Appreciate it. Thank you. I have like 12 wires on me, so I feel like an android. How's everybody doing? I don't quite remember what RF Smart was selling, but you guys could sell me anything. Like, just leave your resume, come on by. Like, I feel like I was about to buy a car. And I would have bought it. That was awesome. Thank you. First of all, I think we undervalue this part. Sitting next to someone, seeing that interaction of like, oh wow, this thing is really cool. So again, I know we do this like all the time, and we've said it a million times, but bravo to the planners and all of the staff at Code on the Beach. Let's give them one more time, one more round of applause. Because, man, this is awesome. So, I've heard a proverb before, and it says, a wise man once said, nothing at all. And I thought that was really profound. And then I was like, but Code on the Beach asked me to speak for like 45 minutes. Now I wonder what you guys actually think of me. But we're gonna start like this. I want everybody to close your eyes, please. All right. Now you're the child version of yourself, laying in the grass in a field on a sunny day. As you stare into the sky, you see the fluffiest cloud that you've ever seen in your life. Now think about what it would be like to touch that cloud. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? Is it excitement to be up in the sky? Maybe it's laying in like a really soft thing. Like, what does that feel like? Now, I want you to remember that feeling. Hold on to it. Now, keeping your eyes closed, imagine you're an adult. You wake up in the morning, you get ready for work. You slept for an ungodly amount of hours, but somehow you're still tired. Side note, nobody told you that when you're an adult, like one day you would feel a little tired and then that feeling never goes away. Anyway, you get ready, you grab a cup of coffee, get your keys, you head to the car, you open the garage, and it's the foggiest day that you've ever seen. You couldn't see a hand if it slaps you in the face. I mean, it was bad. And you know what that drive is gonna be like. Now hold on to that feeling and open your eyes. When I was young, I used to stare at the sky and dream about what it would be like to touch a cloud. And I wonder at what point I was taught that fog is mundane and nothing more than a decrease in visibility. And that's just the perspective I want you to have as we continue, because my goal today is to change the way that you think about what it is that you do. So a bit of a set list. We just had a bit of a warm up. How's everybody feeling? Feeling good? All right. So I'm gonna give you a bit of an intro. Spoiler alert, there will be some spoilers. Then we're gonna talk about money. We'll talk about power, and we'll talk about respect. Also, disclaimer, things that I'm presenting today are my own opinions and not opinions of any company that I may represent. So that being said, I've attached references and resources to all the factoids I may give you today, all right? Cool. Bit of an intro on me. My name is Jameyel Johnson. I'm actually from Jacksonville, Florida. Yeah, thank you. I got one single clap, which is incredibly hard to do. That is precision speaking right there. When somebody can go, that's precision. All right. Anyway, full stack engineer. I actually started out working at a company here called CSX. Worked there for about 11 years. Learned a lot. Started as a .NET developer. Learned Java. Wanted to learn more about like the depths of computing. So I was like, I'm gonna be a sysadmin. And I like stood up servers and was working with like WebSphere and JBoss and Cold Fusion, if any of you are old enough to remember with that stuff. And then I was like, well, I like front end stuff, so I'm gonna start building front end things. So learned Angular, which was like the hotness at the time. Started getting into DevOps stuff and brought AWS into that company. I helped out with that. Then I was like, I wanna learn more about startup things. Like, how does a company actually build from the ground up? Ended up moving out to Austin, Texas for a company called Everly Health. And learned a lot. Right now we work with Contentful, so I was learning about CMSs and React and Gatsby and Svelte and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The thing about, developer community is that you can't ever learn all the things, which is cool for me because I try my best. All right. The other side of this coin is my name is J Dash. I am a multi-platinum artist, producer, and songwriter, award-winning film composer. I'm a national advocate for music education, which means I get to travel to DC and talk to congressmen and senators about music education and how you fund that and make sure kids have access to arts. I'm actually also an active board member of a few companies, Moon Ultra, which I'll talk about later, RISE, it's a child development center that's centered around anti-racism, and Make Music Count, which I'll talk about as well. If you see this picture down at the bottom, it's because I do what's called sync licensing, meaning when you're watching a TV show and you hear music in it, sometimes it might be mine. Cool. Everybody good? Awesome. All right. So we're going to do a bit of a back and forth exercise here. When I finish reading a thing on the next few slides, I want you to respond with the word bars. Got it? Now, this is a bit of an amen in the hip hop community, so we're going to try it. On three, I want you to say it. 1, 2, 3. Bars. Bars. That's what I'm talking about. All right, here we go. Spoiler number 1. You are a successful business, but you need more employees. Bars. That's what I'm talking about. So not to insinuate that you're alone, but you are a business, and a business is defined as an organization or enterprising entity engaged in commercial, industrial, or professional activities. I think you do some of those things, right? So basically, if you make money for any product or service you provide, you are a business. Second fact, our second spoiler. Just because something is satisfactory doesn't make it fair. Bars. Now, you're probably all paid pretty well, I hope. And maybe you're even compensated fairly, in your opinion, for what it is you do. My goal is to make sure that you are just aware of all of the variables that you may be missing before you make the decision that you are compensated fairly, right? Now, spoiler number 3. Developers that write unicorn code deserve life-changing amounts of money. That should have been the loudest one. Y'all awake? I said developers that write unicorn code deserve life-changing amounts of money. That's what I'm talking about. That's a bar. So you've heard the term building a unicorn before, right? Like a unicorn company. And usually that term is reserved for companies that like eclipse the value of $1 billion valuation when they start out as a startup, right? Now, what happens after that? What happens when that company is churning? It's a mid-level, mid-sized, large-sized company, and the code that you write made that company another $1 billion. I call that unicorn code, right? And it's worth more than you're charging for it. Now, next, we're going to talk about money, but first, I'm going to read you a poem. Top companies like Amazon, Disney, McDonald's, FedEx, Home Depot, and Hilton. Shareholders grew $1.5 trillion richer, while workers got less than 2% of that benefit. Rising share values increased the wealth of 13 billionaire founders and heirs at 7 companies by approximately $160 billion, more than 12 times the additional pay for more than 3 million workers at that company, or those companies. And in 2020 alone, these company CEOs earn nearly $500 million in realized compensation, or an average of more than $22 million each. And scene. You probably tell that wasn't a poem. I was just reading things. But it's very important to know, because we're going to talk about money. We're going to step away from tech for a second. We're going to talk about this guy. This guy, his name is Dev Loper. Now, Dev Loper grew up playing basketball, developed his talent over time, via hard work over decades, started getting noticed by some teams, started getting calls from some agents. They're giving him the "I can make you tons of money" talk, right? And then, offer to help grow his career for a small percentage, right? Sounds familiar. So he signs this deal with an agent. Things start to take off. Now picture your favorite athlete. Could be baseball, basketball, football, cricket, whatever version of football that you like, gaming, whatever. In order to make those people's names as large as they are, it takes an incredible amount of people, right? You guys following me so far? Cool. Now, it takes parents, coaches, takes your teammates, takes community, takes managers, agents, experience, etc. But that's not just in sports. What about visual artists? What about actors? What about rock stars? It's the same story, right? Their journeys all kind of have a common thread. Like, they do more than what's asked of them. They're willing to fail in order to succeed. They make change instead of being affected by it. Lifelong learners, on and on and on, but they don't do it alone. So let's take a look at the people that surround Mr. Loper. He has an agent. I'm sure this guy does a lot of his contract negotiations, public relations, networking stuff, keeps track of his analytics. He has a manager that manages his media relations, his financial planning, branding, philanthropy. He may have a trainer. That guy's responsible for his health and making sure that he is physically able to compete. His performance, his data collection, curriculum, trends. He has his community, brand support, marketing, his fans. All of these people are who make him and are centered around Mr. Loper. But then you also have the employer-centric community. So the owners of the team that he may play for. They're responsible for making sure that that organization is profitable, right? You have the staff that ensure things run smoothly day to day. You got the coaches that are responsible for the team's performance overall and the game plan. And then you have his teammates, which they work together to deliver results to that organization. Is this all making sense? Cool. Now, if you look at his career, say he kind of got off to a rocky start, learned from some legends, became a team leader, and then got traded to a different team where he immediately started adding value based on his experience, right? Led that team to a championship. Then he all of a sudden started activating all these performance-based incentives in his contract, made tons of money. How much value did he bring to Team 1? How much value did he leave when he went to Team 2? Think about that. Now, you may be thinking, great metaphor, but I don't really play sports. Fine. I'll feed you baby birds. Here's a question. Are you quantifying your code's value? So what is the benefit of doing that? And you may be thinking, like, how do I actually do it? What you're trying to do, ultimately, is get you some leverage. Now, what does that mean? First way you can do that, you discover the KPIs of your company. Find out the company's key performance indicators, their objectives, what it is they're trying to actually accomplish. You guys are very familiar with this process, I'm sure. You align those things with your roadmap. You look at the upcoming tasks, try to make sure those things line up. You measure the success of the thing that you're building. You report that thing out. Does that sound familiar? Are you doing that for you? Now, some of the common KPIs, if you're not familiar, that the business usually, or a lot of businesses kind of latch onto, are things like, and I separated this into like an increasing thing and a decreasing thing. So one thing you may want to do is increase your conversion rate. Everybody know what a conversion rate is? Conversion rate is the percentage of users who saw the thing that you built and then performed whatever action that you wanted them to take, whether that's buy a widget or whatever, right? That's conversion rate. User engagement. So how many daily active users do you have? How many monthly active users do you have? The stickiness, which is like daily active users divided by the monthly active users, right? The lifetime value, which is the prediction of the net profit that you would get with the entire future relationship with your customer. Then you have your organic traffic, right? It's pretty self-explanatory. How many people are coming here that I don't have to pay for and finding my thing? Your virality. Anybody know what virality is? It's one of my favorites. Virality, or the viral coefficient, is just the average number of invitations sent by existing users times the conversion rate of that invitation. You can determine how viral your things are. Now, what you also want to do is decrease certain things. Your CAC, your customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost for you to acquire a customer? Your bounce rate, meaning when somebody goes to my site, are they leaving without clicking anything? You want to decrease your monthly churn rate. How many people that were maybe subscribers are unsubscribing, are leaving my product, right? The dev cycle time. You guys familiar with that? How long it takes for you from the moment you make a commit to when that code is in production. Also, decreasing the sales cycle time, meaning how long it takes for a lead to come in to convert that lead for the sales team. Now, you start focusing on those things, you become more than a developer, right? You become more of an integral part of that business, which kind of leads into your career and what that could look like. Now, this is something internal, but kind of dissect or inspect your career and how it's gone so far. Maybe you kind of got off to a rocky start. Maybe you learned from some legends. You became a team leader, got traded to a different team, where you immediately started adding value based on your experience, and then you led that team to several wins. How many of you are getting performance-based incentives? It's a couple. Are you getting bonuses based on your stats? Are you getting bonuses based on how far your team goes together? How much value did you bring to team one? And when you left, how much value did you leave behind? And how much did you take with you? I can answer the question for you. How much value did you leave behind? All of it, right? That's the difference between you and any professional athlete, is that if you write unicorn code and then you leave, that value stays with them. It doesn't go with you. Now, you have that experience, which you can talk about all day. But guess who retained the value? Now, power. We're going to talk a little bit about IP, and I'm not talking addresses. Talking intellectual property. Now, this is something I would say I'm a little personally closer to. What is IP? Now, IP, intellectual property, is something someone has thought of or created. Designs, processes, songs, logos, code, etc. Now, that intellectual property belongs to the person that created it. And that person that created it gets to decide how it's made and who can profit from it. Okay. Now, the thing that a lot of people don't understand or gets missed is that just because you have an idea doesn't make it IP. It's not until it's an artifact that you can share. So if you have an idea, it's not intellectual property until you take your phone out and record it, or until you code it, or until you write down the plan. Then it becomes intellectual property. Y'all with me? Cool. All right. We're going to break down the anatomy of a record deal. Now, this is not fake numbers. This is a real record deal. Now, what generally happens, I'm not going to get too into the weeds, but we'll break this down in the form of like $1 generated from, say, streams on Spotify, right? Now, of that dollar, if I was the artist and I signed to this label, they basically said, you're going to get 16% of all of the recordings that you sell after you've paid back expenses, which is why you should never take large signing bonuses. But that's another story. But not getting into like how performance royalties work and mechanical royalties and things like that, but just know that other income is generated every time that song is played and depending on where it's played. Now, the label takes their piece, and then from your intellectual property that you have created, your song, they give you a percentage, what you've agreed to, right? Now, that being said, the artist, in this case, is treated as a business, right? Now, you may be thinking, if you are a business owner in here, and I've already said like code is intellectual property, you may be thinking, well, what happens if I don't have this deal or something with my developers? Technically, the code itself under copyright law is owned by those developers. But copyright law is weak when it comes to code because it's just the actual code that you wrote is what you own. You could code it in another language. You could change a method and how it works. So it's weak, but that's how that IP works. So if you don't have an agreement, the developers technically own that version of that code. Now, you're like exercising this ownership. You're dropping like these huge concepts, but how would I actually exercise this thing? How is that even possible, right? All right, you may be thinking like, shoot, would I be paid less if we did stuff like this? Or, doesn't this grossly overcomplicate things, talking about code as intellectual property? Well, there's legal precedent for intellectual property in the music business already, right? And the answer for a lot of these questions can be found in the fact that there are open source companies that are also multi-billion-dollar companies. How does that happen? When you're like giving things away for free, kind of. How are these companies exiting at multi-billion dollars? Licensing. Anybody else?
Support.
Absolutely support. The basis of what he's saying is that people want to buy from the person that wrote the code because of the support that comes along with that, right? That's absolutely right. And also, people don't want vendor lock-in, right? All right. So let's talk about how this actually happens with employees right now. Now, I can guarantee you, if you've signed any kind of a contract to be employed by a company, one of three things have happened, most likely, if you're an employee. Either you get no ownership, meaning you come, you develop code for us, and it's ours, right? Sounds familiar. Now, could get some, meaning you come, you're going to develop code for us, we're going to give you some shares in the company. But those shares depend on the performance of the entire company as a whole, right? They're worth money, and it is ownership, but it's not based on anything that you've done. Kind of. Then you get more. So if you work at like a startup, what they do is they give you options to buy shares, right? So they say, we're going to pay you this salary because we can't afford to pay you more than this right now. But the way that we're going to de-risk you is we're going to give you a percentage of our company to come help us build it. And you have the option to buy shares of the company at a really, really small amount of money. And then the goal is that the company does really well. Those shares are worth a lot more than you bought them for. And you become a millionaire, right? Now, that's really cool. And you probably get a decent salary with all of these options too. Now, what's happening with contractors is actually a bit closer to what I'm talking about sometimes. There's this model called background IP versus project IP, meaning, hey, big company A, I know that you want to develop this thing. I'm going to go ahead and develop the background IP for you, but we own that. And we can continue to sell that to everybody else. And then you own your project level intellectual property, right? We just own the background stuff. So they develop it. They can relicense it as many times as they want. And then whatever is project-based or industry-based, they own, you own. Now, in both cases, both parties can exercise what's called pragmatic control. Does anybody know what that means? What is pragmatic control? Basically, that means I could own a car, but if I put it in Chris's garage, he has pragmatic control of my car. So this happens when like you're working with contractors and if they own like the code base or they own the services, the servers that your code is running on, they have pragmatic control of your software. You don't want that to happen. All right, who and the why? There are approximately 5 million developers in the US, about 27 million worldwide, right? Cheryl Liu, that's a recruitment consultant, said the hiring market is crazy competitive, and I'm not sure it's been like this before. You can send 100 emails and maybe get 10 replies. So there's far more demand than supply. That demand is you. The demand is you. You have the leverage already. A lot of companies I've been talking to recently have said, man, we're just trying to figure out how to retain people. They're trying to figure out how to keep you around. But on the flip side of that, because of what's happened in the pandemic, a lot of people are burnt out. And they're leaving jobs that are paying $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year with nothing lined up out of it, after it. Because they're burnt. They have no balance. So some of the advantages, I'd say, and disadvantages of like full-time versus employee, like contractors, is like a full-timer, you have job security, you have benefits, right? You have career advancement opportunities, you have, personal development opportunities, but the disadvantages are you don't really necessarily have a say in your work hours, you have a lack of autonomy sometimes, and there's lesser awareness of like the latest market trends because you're like in your company developing on your stack. And so it's up to you outside of working hours to keep up with what the hell's going on in the rest of the world, right? Now, from the contractor perspective, there's some advantages, which are flexibility and freedom, right? Higher pay than full-time employees, and like on-the-job exposure and some upskilling. But disadvantages are it's difficulty landing work, there's no organizational benefits at all, and there's an unwillingness for companies sometimes to hire contractors. So the future of this is these lines are being blurred, period. Teams are getting more autonomy, they're getting more flexibility, things are leaning in the favor of the developer. My guess is partial IP ownership and employees having someone focused on their personal career growth may actually help close that loop. So here's some perspective. We'll go back to where we started. When I was young, I used to stare at the sky and dream about what it would be like to touch a cloud. And I wonder at what point I was taught that fog is mundane and nothing more than a decrease in visibility. More applicably, I used to stare at a screen and dream about what it would be like to change lives. And I wonder at what point I was taught that code was mundane and nothing more than a job. I truly believe that everybody here has the ability to change the lives of their users and the owners of their companies. That's what you do every day. You build things, you solve problems, and those things affect people. The ownership, in my opinion, should be shared. Now, what are the big ideas? What if recruiters were just working for the wrong people? What if they were just agents that worked for the wrong people? Now think about that. 9 times out of 10, recruiters work at a gig, right? They go find some people, they fill some positions. That person says, I'm gonna give you a check for that person, and that transaction is done. But what if they worked for you? What if they said, you know what? I'm gonna sign a deal with you for 3 years. You give me 5% of your income. I'll make you more money than you've ever imagined. Now, your $150,000 salary might have just been renegotiated for $300K because you've never had anybody negotiate for you before. And guess what? If that recruiter has 20 clients, that $300K you making, he's making $300K. Everybody wins. Now, infrastructure, like a lot of these things don't actually need a huge change. We have the tools and the ability to track these things already, and it can be automated. Automatic IP administration is an idea I had for a long time, which is like, remember when I was talking about what if I left company A and went to company B? What happens to all that value? Imagine if I wrote a piece of code and that code was generating an extra, or it increased the conversion rate by 3%. Now, you get a large enough amount of money, that's significant. What if I took 1% of the net? When I left, that follows me. That value is mine. I added it as long as that code is in production. That is not a strange concept. That is happening in almost every other industry, the concept of ownership. 16% is a bad record deal, but so is 0. Now, I think the future of retention is in work-life balance, and it's in ownership. People are no longer impressed with workplace perks like ping pong tables, right? You got a beer keg. I'm not even going in the office anymore. What do you mean? I don't care about your ping pong table. You know what I mean? They're barely in the office. They just want balance. They want autonomy to solve problems, and they want ownership. I want to be able that when the economy tanks, because I built things that are making somebody else $1 billion over here, I can feed my family for another 3 months. That's what I want. Now, that being said, I feel like I've lost everything. You either love me or you hate me right now. I can't really tell. And I think it's like 50-50, depending on where you are in your business. I have a few shameless plugs. Now, speaking of balance, not too long ago, I put out a tweet. And I said, at this point in your career, what's the most important thing that would make you accept a job? Now, overwhelmingly, people responded with work-life balance. Now, here's the deal. I also needed help with work-life balance. I say I probably still need help with work-life balance. So I took some time because honestly, I wanted to learn Svelte. I thought it was really cool. I was like, I'm gonna build a thing. So I built a work-life balance calculator called Scales. Feel free to check it out and find your own balance. My wife was like, you need to work on your work-life balance. So I spent 2 weeks building a work-life balance calculator. I don't think that's what she was asking for. I called it a twofer, you know? Anyway, can't leave without shouting out Everlywell, which is the company I actually moved to Austin, Texas for. It's basically digital healthcare. That's for you. Your body doesn't come with a user manual. And so I think with the way that the medical field is, having something to give you the ability to learn more about yourself with transparent pricing, I think it's pretty cool. I believe in the vision of this company. I've been working for them for the past 4 years, and I'll continue to work for them for the foreseeable future because I think it's an amazing product. Check them out. Also, I'm on the board of a company called Moon, which is basically just mobile lighting. for your phone. It's a great product. It's one of Time Magazine's top inventions of 2020. It was featured on The Ellen Show. So it's an amazing product. Happy to be a part of that. Also, I'm on the board of a company called Make Music Count, which teaches kids how to do math better by learning scales on the piano. It's an incredible app if you have kids, or shoot, if you just want to learn calculus, download Make Music Count and maybe learn some piano at the same time. It's really cool. It was actually featured on TNT's The Game Plan with Shaquille O'Neal and Big Boy from Outkast. So check that out. It's dope. Last but not least, my goal is to make 25 millionaires by 2025. These are developers. So if you want to learn more, or if you want to be a part, go sign up at devage.com right now. Cool. Oh wait, I almost forgot. I have something for you. Right now, a virtual conference is happening, which I was also a part of, called composability.dev. So if you actually go here, composability.dev/beach, and just sign in. The conference is happening for the next 3 days. You have the opportunity to win some stuff. So go ahead and check that out. Maybe get some AirPods, gift cards, whatever you like. Cool. Follow me on all the socials, The Real J Dash. With that being said, I appreciate your time. Thank you.